Before we get started on the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Today we are finishing the last of the 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas. So we will finish consciousness, which is Vijnana in Sanskrit. All right. So, what have we learned from the past 4 aggregates? In one sentence, what have you learned? Illusion. Okay, what else? I'm either a bad teacher or no one was paying attention, or both.
None of them can be changed.
All unchanging. Yep. As soon as you start thinking your perceptions are wrong, absolutely. But yeah, so they all have in common all those aspects, right? They are all unchanging, all impermanent, all a process, right? And so consciousness here, I'm trying to think of I don't think of consciousness here as in the kind of like the physiological term or the kind of medical scientific term of consciousness. And I not attempted, but I thought about changing the name of consciousness to something else. Because we're going to think of consciousness as like mental consciousness, which is still correct, but it's not, it doesn't fully cover what the aggregate is. So I'm going to attempt to do my best to describe this consciousness. But anyway, consciousness here as an aggregate is simply just what makes phenomena present for us, right? It's the bringing of our senses into creating these sense consciousnesses, right? So there's the eye consciousness, the nose consciousness, the ears, the mouth, the tongue, and mind consciousness. And it's this kind of phenomena that arise and that's dependent on the mind consciousness, right? That is thoughts, emotions, or perceptions, right? It depends on how those thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are in the mind that kind of create this mind consciousness. Because the mind consciousness in itself doesn't do anything, right? It just takes in all the other 4 aggregates and the senses from those 4 aggregates to then say, oh, this is that, this is this, I like this, I don't like that, etc., right? And in a way, we can say that the mind consciousness is kind of like the inner world, and the other 4 aggregates kind of comprise the physical or the external outer world. But when the Buddha would analyze this, right, this kind of division isn't so obvious, isn't so absolute, right? Because it's actually in his teachings where he often made a point to override the division by referring to any feeling, mental or physical, or contemplating things internally and externally, right? And the Buddha would say it in this way because his teachings weren't being, he wasn't being discriminate, right? He wasn't discriminating between what appears to be mind and what appears to be matter, right? It comes from understanding of experience, it comes from the understanding of, it comes from the understanding, it comes from the understanding the experience of all things, right? And it's in that understanding that occurs within kind of the matrix of the sixfold senses, right? The eye, nose, ear, mind, tongue, and body consciousness, and their designations. So in one of the sutras called the Sense Basis Sutra, which is in the Sunyata Nikaya division of sutras, the Buddha states that in the world by which one is sorry, I only had one cup of coffee this morning, so my mind is not functioning correctly as it should. Not that it ever is, right? Impermanent. Anyway, let me repeat. That in the world by which one is a perceiver of the world, a conceiver of the world, that is called world, in the Noble One's discipline. And what, friends, is that in the world by which one is a perceiver of the world, a conceiver of the world? Right? It's the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and mind. Basically, the senses is what is the conceiver and the perceiver and conceiver. So if we look at it this way, then consciousness is not a permanent soul, right? There's not a permanent self there. It's an unchanging. It's not an unchanging observer. It's not an eternal witness watching the movie of your life, kind of in there somewhere, right? It's simply an aggregate, just like the other four. It's temporary, it's conditional, and it's impermanent. And of course, this kind of tends to bother some people because people have the deep belief that there has to be a soul. There has to be something controlling our life, right? Something that's constant and unchanging, something that's me. But even those that come and have a profound spiritual journey, right? They take refuge in statements like, I am the awareness observing my thoughts. I am consciousness witnessing experience. I am the eternal observer. I was a fool of this statement as well. It was probably like a year or two ago when I sat here in front of you and stated that I am awareness experiencing body. I'm awareness experiencing feeling. I'm awareness experiencing perceptions. I'm awareness experiencing mental formations. I'm awareness experiencing consciousness. That whole thing was false. It was wrong. Because what would the Buddha say if he heard me say that? He would be like, no, you're not. Right? Because even consciousness itself is conditioned and impermanent, right? There's no witness that exists separate from what's witnessed. There's no witness separate from what is witnessed, right? Consciousness always depends on conditions that arise and cease and fall and go away. Because if consciousness were a permanent self, right, it wouldn't disappear. If consciousness were essential, you wouldn't lose it. But we do regularly, right? Every night when we go to sleep, we lose consciousness. Between thoughts and in gaps of attention, we lose consciousness. So consciousness in itself isn't something that's continuous, right? It's discrete. It arises and passes away moment by moment. Just like the frames in a movie, right? That creates the illusion of a continuous flow. If you slow down the movie slow enough, you'll see little flickers, right? That means that you'll see the flickers of each of the frame. And even ancient philosophers would debate about consciousness, right? Or the permanence of consciousness. In Hindu philosophy, for instance, it teaches the about Atman, right, which is the eternal consciousness, the unchanging witness, a permanent self. But from the Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist perspective, it directly challenges this. Because the Buddha's argument in the Anattaka Sutta, right, the sutra that we spoke about last time on non-self, if consciousness were self, you could control it, but you can't, right? Can you? You would be able to control what appears in consciousness. You can prevent unpleasant awareness from arising, right? But can you? Can you prevent the unpleasantness from arising? Can you force pleasant awareness to stay? No. So consciousness arises and dependent on conditions, right? It arises and falls away, and it arises and falls away as conditions change. So it's not controllable, and therefore there's no self. If consciousness were self, then it wouldn't cause so much suffering. But obviously it does. It causes unwanted thoughts and causes disturbing memories to arise again and traumatic flashbacks, right? So if consciousness were truly yours, truly you, then why would it torture you? So consciousness then is just another process mistaken for self. It is a process arising from conditions. And if the conditions are present, consciousness arises, right? There's no magic to it. There's no soul or permanent being required, right? There's no, even from a medical perspective, right? As of now, there's no single region in the mind or the brain that produces consciousness, right? It appears to be just this emergent property arising from the complex interactions dependent on the conditions that we're in or that arise. So in our meditation practice, though, the observance of consciousness itself may sound kind of abstract, right? But it's pretty direct for the most part, because you're sitting and you're watching the breath and you suddenly notice the awareness of the breath. That's consciousness appearing, right? And it knows its object, which is the breath. So you're watching the breath closely, you breathe, the breath is the object, and consciousness knows the breath, knows the object, right? It's aware. And so they arise together, the observer and the observed. So there's no consciousness without the object and no object without consciousness that knows it, right? They co-arise and are dependent and conditional. But now that that breath ends, right, and the attention shifts, sound appears, right? We can use the great example of the door just opening, right? Sound appears and you hear the sound, and ear consciousness arises, right? And it knows sound, and the previous consciousness of the breath is gone, and a new consciousness appears. So you're watching consciousness arise and cease moment to moment, each type different and distinct. Each moment is new, but they're all what? Temporary, right? So then what do we do to dissolve this grand illusion, this final illusion of the self or the belief in self in these aggregates? Because if we're observing consciousness, especially in meditation, what's doing the observing? Right? Just another consciousness observing the first consciousness, right? And then what observes that consciousness? Another consciousness observing that consciousness, and another consciousness observing that consciousness, and another, right? It's an infinite regress of just consciousness observing consciousness. Or maybe there's no separate observer at all. Maybe the observer is just another momentary consciousness arising and passing, mistaken for a permanent witness. So maybe watching is just another process, and there is no watcher. Events are happening, but no one's experiencing them. So consciousness appears, but no one's being conscious. Even when you say, I am awareness, but that in itself is empty. Because the observer is observed, the witness is watched. It's an infinite regress of it's an infinite loop, right? Or maybe there's just no one there at all.
Or maybe you can't just explain it.
Maybe you can't explain it either. Think of things like think of like when you're at the house, right? If you're multitasking, you're really not paying attention to every little thing. Right? Maybe you're cooking, the TV's on the background, and you're watching TV, but you're really not watching TV. You're not really conscious of what's happening on the TV. Right? To be conscious of something means to put your direct awareness fully on that object. Right? That's why in meditation, the breath is our object of meditation, or one and only thing we need to concentrate on. But if something else arises, like the door opening, we hear a sound, the dog barking, or the AC turns on and off, or you feel a discomfort in the body or something, right? The correct way is to shift your full attention into whatever just arose, right? Acknowledge that new set of consciousness. And then once that condition disappears, go back to your main object of meditation, the breath, right? And so instead of, let me use the example of counting the breath. When you're counting the breath, though it is a very effective technique of meditation, it very, very quickly becomes unuseful. Because as we start to count, especially if you're only counting to 10, for instance, right? It's very easy to eventually put that on autopilot and your mind is counting, but then on the other side of your mind, it's thinking of something else. But you're still counting. So to you, it seems like you're still meditating because you're counting and you haven't lost track and you're still mindful of the counting, but the mind is also doing something else. That's not meditation. That's not being aware. That's not being conscious. That's not being observant. You've lost concentration. The moment your mind shifted from the main object of meditation to something else. So the thing that you thought that was most certainly you, right? Your awareness at your consciousness that arises and ceases moment by moment are just dependent on conditions. They are empty of inherent existence, of an inherent essence. No home, no permanent observer, no eternal awareness. So again, consciousness is just revealed as another process. It's not you, it's not yours, it's not permanent. So then, where is you? Right? It's not in form, because that's always changing. Right? It's not in feeling, because feelings arise and cease. It's not in perception, because those are just conditioned interpretations. It's not in mental formations, because that are just the automatic patterns that arise. And it's definitely not in consciousness, because that's just, again, flickering, like the movie, just flickering. It's conditional, and it's impermanent, temporary. So as we meditate on the 5 aggregates, you do the contemplation of the 5 aggregates, right? And you examine them and we deconstruct them. We can see that each one is empty, right? It's not self. There's no inherent existence in any of these aggregates. But then we can ask, well, then how do they even come together? How do they come together and form the very convincing illusion of self? And it's that realization that we need to come to. So the first step is to recognize that each of the aggregate in itself is not a self. And then once we accept, not accept, that's the wrong word. Once we realize, right, the form is not self, the feeling is not self, the perceptions are not self, the mental formations are not self, the consciousness is not self, then what is or isn't? Then what are the five aggregates? Where is the self? If it's not in each of them, or not in any of them, then where?
Isn't that nirvana?
Isn't that nirvana?
I'm asking.
Oh, I know, I'm asking, I was correct. I was making sure I heard your question correctly. Isn't that nirvana? What do you mean?
There's something.
Oh, we'll get to that. Oh, yeah, okay. I get where we're going now. Oh, we'll get to that. We're getting there. I know where you're going with this. So we're getting there. So, if none of these things are self, right? If form is simply just the body, and feeling just motivates movement, perception just interprets reality, our mental formations just generate the action, and consciousness kind of puts all together or knows it all, then that's what? They're just 5 processes, 5 temporary events, and somehow this becomes you. The greatest magic trick, the greatest illusion to ever exist. But then what is actually happening, right? If each of these are not self, and the combination in a way is not self, then hopefully through your conclusion, we can conclude that the aggregates don't exist separately, right? But that they co-arise and are interdependent, and that is what creates experience, right? So again, form provides kind of stage, right? The body, the material basis that is needed. Then feelings motivate you, right? Pleasant feelings push you or pull you in, and then unpleasant feelings kind of push you away. Perception just interprets and labels. It creates meaning from the raw data that we take in. Mental formation creates that action that we get from our perceptions and our habits, and creates habits and patterns and personality. And then consciousness just knows awareness as it appears, right? It knows that experience is happening. So all the 5 aggregates working together, moment by moment, is creating the appearance of this unified self, just kind of like instruments in an orchestra, right? Each playing its part, but together it creates a symphony. But then you can ask, where is the symphony? Is the symphony in the violin? Is it in the cello? Is it in the drums? Is it in the piano? Right? The symphony isn't any one particular instrument, right? It's all, or is it all the instruments together? So, but if we examine each of the instruments, all we find is wood, metal, strings, air, right? There's no symphony essence to it. But symphony is just a concept, a useful designation, right? That it is applied to the instruments playing together. So as a conventional truth, right, the symphony does exist. Obviously, we can hear it, we can see it, we can feel it. But as an ultimate truth, no symphony essence can be found. In the Milinda Panna, the text, the questions of King Milinda meets the monk Nagasena. And so when the king arrives to see Nagasena, Nagasena asks the king, where is the chariot? where is your chariot? And the king points out and says, this is the chariot that I arrived in. So then Nagasena questions him and asks, well, is the chariot the wheels? And the king says, no. Is the chariot the axle? The king says, no. Is the chariot the frame, the seat, the hooks or the nails? And the king says, no. And then Nagasena again asks, well, is the chariot all the parts put together? And the king says, well, yeah, the chariot is all the parts. But if I examine all the parts, and I don't find the chariot anywhere, right? Remove the wheels, is it still a chariot? Remove the axle, is it still a chariot? Remove the frame, the seats, the pins, the needles, and all the other things that create the chariot. So the king sees, right, he was able to see that the chariot is just a concept, a useful designation that is applied to the parts being arranged in a particular way. And in that arrangement of that particular way comes this emergence of the chariot, and so we call it the chariot. So as a conventional truth, again, right, the chariot does exist. You can ride it, it's functional, it's useful. But as an ultimate truth, there is no chariot essence that exists. Only parts put together mistaken for a thing. Similarly, you are also just a concept applied to the 5 processes, 5 aggregates. Again, as conventional truth, you exist, you function, you answer to your name. But as an ultimate truth, if you examine the aggregates, no you can be found. Just 5 processes, again, mistaken for a person. Don't panic, right? Don't fall into nihilistic thinking here. Right? I don't want you thinking that, well, if there's no self, right, then nothing matters, right? Morality disappears. Life becomes meaningless. No, absolutely not, right? Because understanding this doesn't make you disappear. You still function, you still live, you still make choices, you still have decisions. The difference, though, is that there is not a rigid identification. There's no desperate clinging to something, right? No existential defense behind that. So then there's a type of freedom that comes from that tyranny of me and mine, right? That this isn't nihilism, right? Actions still have consequences. Karma still operates. Morality still matters. But it's about recognizing the process of causation without needing a permanent agent or a permanent thing behind that to make the decisions or control anything. Yes, sir.
Maybe for sure I'm agreeing, but the example of the chariot is not the best example because the chariot does not have a consciousness in and of itself. You can't say, well, in the same way the chariot does not exist, you do not exist. No, because something's happening here that's not happening in the chariot.
The example of the chariot were about the parts. You are also made up of parts, no?
But something is happening different. Contrary to the chariot, something is happening within me that's generating all of this.
Prove it.
Of course, there's no temple on earth having different chariots or different carts or different objects talking about this. We are human beings and we are doing this. And we are actually able to escape reality.
Are you though?
The chariot does not. The chariot cannot.
Says who? Yes. Let me get back to you.
If you take the chariot further, you could go, what makes up the chariot? What makes those things that make up the chariot? What arises from all the way from? You can think down to the Big Bang, and when you look at that, you look at this vast nothingness, but is it really therefore there is still that interconnected relationship between you and that which you say is not, but could be there's no actual such thing as no thing, because there's an interconnected relationship between us and everything that is. Now, my question is, in the five aggregates, storehouse consciousness would be the dynamicness that keeps that aware of a self. Because without it, you just dissolve into nothing, but there is no such thing as no thing. So that you resolve right into the ultimate reality, which is what is which we would call moksha or nirvana in a sense, because there's the idea that I-ness is illusionary only because you attach yourself to the I, but in ultimate sense, you are everything that is and that which has always has been. And in that sense, you can approach life from a state of detachment instead of attachment, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the Buddhist sense, thereby deletes storehouse consciousness by this awareness.
Yes, but I also want to correct that this is not referencing to storehouse consciousness. Storehouse would be the eighth consciousness of the eight consciousnesses, right? So this is consciousness of senses only, right? Of your six senses, plus mind, right? Your five physical senses and the six senses of the mind. Then the seventh and eighth consciousness, right? The alaya vijnana is the storehouse consciousness. That's kind of a separate thing, right? That's everything else. But everything you said is still valid to this, right? So everything you said is still correct. I just wanted to correct the storehouse consciousness statement. Because that's beyond the five aggregates. But consciousness, the reference to consciousness here is only in reference to to the five sense organs and mind, right? So there's, going back to the chariot, parts of the chariot we can look at it as the same way the same way Vijnana here is referencing the six senses. The parts of the pieces also represent six senses, right? There's more than six, right? I'm saying six. Like we can use the axle, the wheels, the nails, the wood, the frame, all different parts can create whatever number it is. But those are its organs, right? Those are its senses. So that's why I'm using the example of the chariot, or why I use the example of the chariot. It's not something that has to necessarily be, oh, this is living and this is unliving, or this is inanimate and this is conscious. That's not what this is referencing, okay? Consciousness here just means our own consciousness because of the senses that come in. Because of your eyes, nose, ears, tongue, and mouth and body, because you have those senses, there's an awareness. That's why in the beginning of this I said, conscious may not be the best word to use. Okay? I gave you that warning at the very beginning. A better term, actually, would be awareness. But we use the word consciousness because that's the term that people are like, oh, I'm conscious, right? Like, are you though? Are you actually conscious? Because typically consciousness means awake. But we're not always awake, right? We're sleeping most of the time. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Are you referencing like the three bodies of the Buddha?
Itself in terms of the idea, because we have the Buddha nature, I guess, anyway. So we could contemplate maybe the five aggregates we're talking about as historical, Stephanie, as historical.
Yes.
Sitting here.
Yes. Yes. The physicality of being, yes, right? So five aggregates is essentially, I don't want to say the easiest or the best, but it's the most traditional way to overcome the first noble truth, which of life, that is life is suffering. Life is suffering because five aggregates exist, and to overcome the first of the 10 fetters, which is self-view. Those self-view, as we discussed already, or self-identification, is slightly different than non-self, but they still have a connection, right? But the five aggregates still help dissolve that sense of self, as a fetter and as the first noble truth. Yes, sir.
Last week we discussed that. I mean, all of them are impermanent. We discussed last week that form can be changed, things can be changed, perception can be changed, mental formation too. Can we actually change our consciousness?
Well, consciousness is, again, not a thing. It's just awareness, right? So it's the awareness that the body exists, feelings exist, mental formations, perceptions exist, and that they are unchanging and they are impermanent.
That's a change.
I'm sorry?
We're just changing by doing it.
Right, you're changing it pretty much the way that you the way you believe things, right? Or the way you see things, or the way you accept things. It's let's put it this way: the conscience is the worker, right? And the remaining four are the conscience is the manager, and the other four are the workers, right? The workers do all the tedious manual labor, but it's the manager that makes the ultimate decisions, right? And so you see things, you feel things, you think of things, you understand things. All these are basics. All these are kind of what the little worker ants are doing. But then once it comes into consciousness and you recognize what this is, what you hear, what you see, what you feel, what you like, see, hear, taste, touch, and think, then a decision needs to be made, right? You either say something back, or you do something, or you change, or you continue, or whatever it may be. The consciousness itself, again, I guess it's just the machine, right? And then it's in mental formations that is where change can happen, because it's a mental formation from what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, that create the perceptions of the mind, and the perceptions create the formation. Formation tells you, I like this, I don't like this, I enjoy this, I don't enjoy that, this is pretty, this is ugly, this is tall, this is short, etc., etc., etc. All the designations we give is created in the mental formations.
So you cannot change consciousness. That consciousness. You didn't change it.
Right, it's unchangeable. It is changeable. It's again, it's where the decisions are made, right? And so if your mental formations is telling you, I don't like this, well, you're aware of that formation, like, oh, why don't I like this? And if you think about it and you meditate on it and you contemplate on it and you kind of dissect and you analyze and you go through the flow, you may recognize, this is why I don't like it. And then once you come to that realization of, this is why I don't like it, then you have a conscious awareness that maybe I should change. Maybe my way of thinking or my way of believing is wrong, and I can change.
But then consciousness stays the same. if for example, I devote myself to Buddhist practice, 10 years from now, hopefully, form will not be the same, feelings will not be the same, perception won't be either, or mental formation. But what about consciousness? It's the same consciousness. The sleep has not changed. See what I mean?
I see what you're saying, but I don't.
When I'm dead, probably it's going to be different if I return. But in this life, can we change consciousness in the same way we can change the first four?
Yes.
How? I'm not saying I'm not saying, well, since it's impermanent, it changes by itself. Because that happened with the first four too. I'm just saying, can we actively change consciousness in the same way we can change our feelings, our perceptions? See what I'm going?
Yeah, but you're thinking too much of you're thinking consciousness as something like feelings or perception mental formations, right? It's not the same, right? So if we really would need to split up the list. So the first four would be its own list, and then consciousness would be another list. Consciousness is changed according to what the first four do, right? And so the first four does stuff, and consciousness now has a decision. Do I want to continue this? Is this correct? Is it incorrect? Is it right or wrong? Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? Is it good or bad? Right or wrong? And at that point, you have a decision to make, right? And so the first four work together and do something and have something, and then a decision. Yeah, it's changeable, just like everything else, right? The best example of consciousness changing is something you've liked as a child that you no longer like now. I think I mentioned last week that I don't like cheese anymore. But as a kid, I ate cheese like it was just like a stick of cheese, a block of cheese. I would literally be eating blocks of cheese. But now I can't stand cheese. I hate cheese. Cheese is really gross, right? So that's my consciousness changing from the belief that I like cheese at one point and now no longer like cheese, right? It's just the awareness that change had occurred, that my taste buds changed. Correct. Consciousness is the awareness that I liked cheese at one point and now I no longer like cheese. That's what consciousness is. Yes, sir.
So for my own, maybe it's not, I'm not doing that enough, but is there a possibility at any point you get rid of the storehouse consciousness, or is that something that's always going to be in flux, in a sense?
Oh, that's the one thing that will not change. That won't go away, sorry. That won't go away.
That's the one thing that will not change, is storehouse consciousness.
No, not change. It will change. It won't go away is what I meant. It won't go away. It won't go away.
So then there is a constant awareness, but not the awareness in the sense of I'm aware of form, feeling, perceptions, and mental formations, but there is something that which is stored, flame which is stored, that can be extinguished. Because there's always awareness. Because if there's always storehouse consciousness, then there is a flame that must never be extinguished. And that flame is what you could call the self. Because you cannot get rid of the storehouse consciousness. It always exists.
Storehouse is just the adding things to consciousness. It's not storehouse.
You've already called consciousness awareness, and you said with storehouse consciousness, it is stored like death and reincarnation, and it grows. Of course, it grows, and you can make that ego suffer, but there still exists. There's no way the storehouse consciousness does not exist. Therefore, there always is a dynamicness that
So let's talk about this whole philosophy and whole I think that's what we are doing. We have to elevate the suffering or the suffering is not hard to elevate the suffering. The reason we thought of the five aggregates because we had like purpose of teaching this no-self concept is to not get attached from the five aggregates. It's not like dissecting or researching or debating what the elements are. What it was frequently getting attached, frequently thinking the egoistic point of view like, okay, this is me. We exist is feel right, we exist. We are transient, we are temporary. That's all the teaching is. It's impermanent. It's not permanent. Whether it's conscious or introduced by the energy that we can do. And we don't attach ourselves thinking, okay, this is me. And that's always the suffering. That's the benefit of it. So Buddha is trying to teach you, like, okay, no, this is your destiny, these are harmony things, whether it's consciousness or form. But once we get into this, like, researching the scientists can't figure out, we are nobody to figure these things out. Scientists are researching for like 100 years. How this would work or work. And this is not philosophical question, but Buddha has the look at the concept that he was trying to teach us. That no, don't suffer, we don't have to get attached to these things, thinking this is me and this is my body or my way of whatever this is my ego. And that's what causes suffering. So that's why in that context, so none of the concept why are we trying to teach us that don't get attached to these fights and other fights. But it's still legitimate to ask yourself, is there something else? Okay, I get it. 5 aggregates now. I'm not suffering anymore. Is there something else? Asking the question, I mean, we should ask questions. Buddha says, ask every single question. Not simply believe. So this question is valid. I mean, we're just asking, is there something else? So that's why I put the question of black hole. Black holes exist. Everything goes in black holes. Because we see like what happens to all the stars and 20 years ago we went to what we were even talking about black holes. They didn't exist, the concept of the wrong world. But similarly, the consciousness it died before the black hole. Or whatever, things like these just don't become black hole. It goes. And like you were telling that someone is what they say, okay, holding up the Atma holding the Atma, something like that, they're just holding up one marketing to that. So everything is content and temporary event. That's all we have to understand. Where it goes, it doesn't matter. It's like we are getting what this fantasy life, we are so ahead. So we have to alleviate this suffering by just reducing this protection so we don't suffer. That's all it is. Because what happens after we die? Yes, we don't care. We don't care. So I care that makes me. I mean, that does not make me suffer.
To add on what you were saying, I'll just use it in Venerable. And then there's Brahman with attributes and Brahman without attributes. Brahman without attributes is the implication of I am that which is and always has been. Brahman without attributes is I am that which is.
You mean Brahman?
Brahman is the creation aspect of the trimurti, which is creation, preservation, and destruction, which is cycle. Brahman is ultimate reality. Is everything, and Brahman without Brahman without attributes is ultimate reality. Brahman with attributes is being able to acknowledge all these attributes, call it Brahman, and stay in a state of awareness, which could be looked at as like having like awareness in body. Sorry, I just picked it.
Those are philosophical things like nobody actually
right. But similarly, in finite model and in finite model in science, there's no answer right now. No tell you the meaning to what define science, but there's no definitive answer. And that's what you're talking about. You don't know.
Yes, Amanda.
I love that you mentioned that in the beginning, the Buddha teaches that there's nothing except the moment and now. And we shouldn't be concerned of what's coming, what's in the past, because there's only now.
Correct.
So it doesn't matter what comes after you, what came before, all we have is this present moment.
Which is why I didn't answer either of your questions, because those questions are wrong questions to ask. If you know me, you know I don't answer questions that have no answer. Both of their questions. What comes next, or what did you say, Lise? No, not you. Whatever question your was, so what I think was your question, right?
I was just asking whether we can change consciousness or
No,
not.
not that one. The other question. Now I already forgot what it was.
So your question was, what comes after the five aggregates? That was your question, not mine. And I said, is it nirvana? And you said, well, it's nirvana.
No. What comes after is the release of self, belief of self. That's the whole purpose of the five aggregates. There's nirvana. You get a glimpse of nirvana, but you still have nine aggregates, nine fetters to go to become a mind. So this is only step 1 out of 10.
So getting rid, not rid, but letting go of the five aggregates, the result is your self-view just goes away, right?
You don't have an attachment to their self-view. Mm-hmm.
That's good enough.
That's the whole foundation of Buddhist teaching, is to let go of attachment. That's why we suffer. You only suffer because of the second noble truth that tells you that you're attached to desires. That's why you suffer. You're attached to your body. I can guarantee it. That's why you're all wearing clothes. You're attached to your body. Right? You're attached to your feelings because of the choice of clothing you wore. You're attached to your perceptions because you want to make sure that you look presentable to the world. You're attached to your mental formations because you care about how you're presented to the world. And consciousness then is the awareness of, oh, I am attached to my body. I am attached to my feelings. I am attached to my perceptions. I am attached to my mental formations.
Not this life. He's caring for the next life.
From now on, I'm never going to speak about next life. You shouldn't either. If you're worried about that, you will never become enlightened in this life. I guarantee you that right now. If you are too concerned with the next life, you will never become enlightened in this life. And that is the point. The point is not to become enlightened in the next life. It's not to become free from suffering in next lives. No. What's the point of you here then? Why are you here? If you're too concerned with the next life, why are you here? Right? So who cares about the next life? I don't care about the next life. I don't know what the next life is. I don't know if there even is a next life. So why care? What I do care about is releasing my suffering right now. The next life has nothing to do with it. Past life has nothing to do with it. So what's the point?
And one thing I want to point out, next life, a lot of times they talk to the story of they are just to do the check and balance, to teach you so you don't do anything bad, like philosophy is just to do the self-control, so you don't end up doing bad things. It's kind of warning you, not even a bad life. It's not like you're going to have a life. It's just to give you like a punishment. So you're going to have punishment, so don't do these bad things. These are not real stories, like anybody who can think of how this is. So people just telling you that, oh, if you did that, so you're going to, all
So what if the soul is going to reach that? So that's what the parallel that in the next life, the reincarnation, all those philosophical things come up to keep you check and balance, bring check and balance.
Think of it this way. I mean, this is how I'm going to be teaching rebirth from now on. From the second you woke up this morning, you were reborn at least 1,000 times. Tell me why. How were you reborn 1,000 times from the moment you woke up this morning?
Because some of the 5 aggregates have been changing.
Nope. Try again. I mean, yes, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. Exactly. Every breath that you've taken began and ended. There's an ending to it. That's death. When you take a breath in, that's life. You take a breath out, that's death. Every thought that came up was a birth of something. When the thought disappeared, it died. You thought another thought, it was born and it died. Right? That's the rebirth. That's the true rebirth that the Buddha taught us. Not that you're going to be reborn in a heavenly realm next time. Not that you're going to be reborn as a king or as a queen or as a high minister or whatever other examples the sutras use. All this is just to tell you, listen, things change, right? You're not going to be set this in forever.
But Buddha spent a few minutes saying, well, my past lives were this and this and this. So he was actually talking about that.
How do you know?
Very educated, they will understand the way. So he tries to teach the life concept, like, okay, because sometimes people are so believing in the life and death concept, or reincarnation, obsessed with the reincarnation, but can't even teach them, or if the followers going to teach that way, like, okay, you had good life, and then you're going to have good life, next life, good deed. Just to teach so they teach them good deeds, good being, or right being, right speech, like all 8 by 2.
Right. Because even if the whole concept of rebirth, right, is to do better. But you don't need a new life to do better. We're not perfect right now. None of us are perfect, right? None of us are fully enlightened. So we all have room to become better people, right? And so your rebirth of having a better life is to simply just do better in life. Think better, speak better, act better, and then you will naturally become a better person. You will naturally have a more beneficial life. You don't need to die and come back, right?
I love how you use the breath, because the breath is the prana, the dynamicness that goes out of emptiness and into fullness as we breathe in and breathe out. There's life and death in that. And the breath itself is, as you know, gives the life, and then it goes away, and then it comes back again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going from non-duality to duality.
Mm-hmm.
You're going from in a sense, you're going from a state of non-awareness to a state of awareness with the breath. And that's the whole point of meditation. When we breathe in and breathe out, there's this idea of awareness. But there's life and death in there. They're implied to each other, right?
They're inseparable. Yeah.
Yeah. So the breath then becomes like the dynamicness of life. It brings that.
And medically speaking, every time you sneeze, your heart stops, right? So you've died every time you've sneezed. That's in itself a true rebirth right there, right? So sneeze more often. If you want a better next life, start sneezing more. All right, let's go ahead and transfer the merit over to chanting. My heart stops soon, so. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merits of all sentient beings and wish them alignment. You in both bills or do you do one? Start on page 1. The incense in the censer now is burning all the Dharma realm in every place, auspicious clouds appearing. Our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body, homage to the incense cloud canopy, bodhisattvas and great bodhisattvas. In gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetful and realize our true homage to the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma and the realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha Maitreya, honored future Buddha Manjushri, great wisdom, Bodhisattva, universal great conduct, Bodhisattva, all Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattva, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Homage to Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion, Bodhisattva, Restrained Bodhisattva, earth's or grave out Bodhisattva, and the assembly of great pure seed Bodhisattva. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now can hear it, receive, and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. A pilgrim briefly in this world, I am grateful and joyful to hear the Lotus Sutra. How hard to be born a human egg, but I might hope to hear once more the Lotus Sutra. The Buddha moon is hidden, the son of Maitreya, not yet arisen in the long night's darkness. In between, only the Lotus Sutra sheds its light, the wonderful Dharma. Lotus Sutra, whoever copies it, reads it, lives it, they say will be called preacher of the fivefold Dharma, with his 6 truths cleansed in that. He who chants the Lotus Sutra is guarded by a heavenly host. He wanders the world without fear like a lion king. Namo Sadharma Pundarika Sutra, Namo Sadharma Pundarika Sutra, Namo Sadharma Pundarika Sutra. Let's go to page 119. Actually, sorry, go to page 117. 117, chapter 20. Chapter 20, the Bodhisattva never disparaging. At the time the Buddha said to the Bodhisattva and Mahasattva, gainer of great authority, in the past there was a Buddha named Awesome Sound, king of immeasurable supernatural powers and wisdom, leading and guiding one and all, heavenly and human being. Try six faculties were purified because of his transcendental powers. His lifeline extended, and for the sake of others, he preached the sutra far and wide. The many persons who adhere to the law all receive teaching and conversion from this Bodhisattva, who caused them to dwell in the Buddha way. Whenever disparaging life ended, he encountered numberless Buddhas, and because he preached the sutra, he gained immeasurable blessings. Bit by bit he acquired benefits and quickly completed the Buddha. Never disparaging, who lived at the time was none other than myself, and the four kinds of belief who adhere to the law, then who heard never disparaging say, you will become Buddhas, and through the causes thus created encounter numberless Buddhas. They are 500 Bodhisattvas, and the four kinds of believers, men and women of pure faith, who now in my presence listen to the law. In previous existences I encountered these persons who listen to and accept this sutra, the foremost in love, unfolding it, teaching people and causing them to dwell in nirvana. So in age after age they accepted and upheld scriptures of this 10,000,000 kalpas, and inconceivable time will pass before at last one sutra 1,000,000, 10,000 kalpas, and inconceivable time will pass before the Buddha's world honored ones preach the sutra. Therefore it after the Buddha has entered extinction, when they hear a sutra like this, should entertain no doubts or perplexities, but should with a single mind preach the sutra far and wide, age after age, encountering Buddhas and quickly completing the Buddha way. Chapter 21, supernatural powers of the dust come. At the time the Buddha spoke to superior practices, Bodhisattva and the others in the great assembly of Bodhisattvas say, the Buddha saviors of the world abide in their transit, and in order to please living beings they display immeasurable supernatural powers. Their tongues speak to the Brahma heaven, their bodies emit countless beams of light for the sake of those who seek the Buddha. They manifest these things that are rarely seen, the sound of the Buddhas coughing, the sound of them snapping their fingers heard throughout the lands and the 10 directions, and the earth in all those lands moved in 6 ways, because after the Buddha has passed into extinction, there will be those who can uphold this sutra. The Buddhas are all delighted and manifest immeasurable supernatural power, because they wish to entrust this sutra. They praise and extol the person who accepts and upholds it, and though they should just they would never exhaust their praises. The benefits gained by such a person are boundless and inexhaustible, like the vast sky and the 10 directions, and no one can limit to one who can uphold this sutra. Has in effect already seen me, and likewise has seen many treasures, Buddha and the Buddhas that are emanations of my body, and he also sees me too, as I teach and convert the Bodhisattvas. One who hold this sutra causes me and my emanations and many treasures, Buddha who has already entered extinction, all to be filled with joy. The Buddhas who are present, 10 directions, and those of past and future, them to offer alms to them and cause them to be filled with joy. The secret Lotus Sutra, such a person certainly and without doubt will attain the Buddha way. Chapter 20, entrustment. At the time Shakyamuni Buddha rose from his Dharma seat, investing his great Sattvas and Mahasattvas, and spoke these words for immeasurable hundreds, thousands, and thousands, billions of asamkhya kalpas. I have practiced this hard to attain law. Anuttara samyak sambodhi. Now I entrust it to you. You must single-mindedly propagate this law abroad, causing its benefits to spread far and wide. 3 times he patted the bodhisattva and Mahasattvas on the head and spoke these words for immeasurable hundreds, thousands, and thousands, millions of asamkhya kalpas. I have practiced this hard to attain law of Anuttara samyak sambodhi. Now I entrust it to you. You must accept, uphold, read, recite, and broadly propagate this, causing all living to hear and understand it. Why? Because the thus come one has great pity and compassion. He is in no way stingy or begrudging, nor has he any fear. He is able to bestow on living beings the wisdom of the Buddha, wisdom of the thus come one, the wisdom that comes of itself. The thus come one is a great giver of gifts to all living beings. You in this law of the thus come one, you must not be stingy or begrudging in future ages. If there are good men and good women who have faith in the wisdom of the thus come one, you should preach and expound the Lotus Sutra for them, so that others can hear and understand. For in this way you can cause them to gain the Buddha wisdom. If there are living beings who do not believe and accept, you should use some other of them thus come one to teach benefit and bring joy to them. If you do all this, then you will have repaid the debt of gratitude that you owe to the Buddhas. When the Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas heard the Buddha speak these words, they all experienced a great joy that filled their bodies with even greater reverence than before. Then their heads posed their palms together and facing the Buddha raised their voices in unison, saying, "We will respectfully carry out all these things just as the world on earth has commanded. We beg the world honored one to have no concern on this account." The multitude of Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas repeated these words 3 times, raising their voices in unison and saying, "We will respectfully carry out all these things just as the world on earth commanded. Therefore we beg the world honored one to have no concern on this account." At the time Shakyamuni Buddha caused the Buddhas who were emanations of his body and had come from the 10 directions to return each one to his original land, saying, "Each of these Buddhas may proceed at his own pleasure. The tower of many treasures Buddha may also return to its former position." When he spoke these words, the emanation Buddhas from the 10 directions who were seated by the jewel trees, as well as many treasures, Buddha's superior practices, and the others of the great multitude of boundless asamkhayas of Bodhisattva Shadiput, and the other voice hearers, and the 4 kinds of believers, and the heavenly and human beings, asuras and others in all the worlds, hearing what the Buddha great joy. Tab 9, page 171. Heart of the Prajnaparamita, the Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the discourse of Prajnaparamita, shed light on the 5 skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame listen, shadi. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness, emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, shadi. All dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore, in empty, there is neither form nor feelings, nor perceptions, nor mental formations, nor consciousness, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch. Check out mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins, and no extinction of them, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attain. Because there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas grounded in prajnaparamita find no obstacles for their minds, having no obstacles, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore, one should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible truth. The mantra Prajnaparamita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Gate gate para samgate bodhi swaha. Sentient beings are limitless. I vow to liberate them. Afflictions are endless. I vow to eradicate them. Teachings are infinite. I vow to learn them. Buddhahood is supreme. I vow to attain. I vow that from now until the end of my life and in all future lives, until I attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, that I will help all sentient beings in all realms of existence and their suffering. Namo thus come one worthy of offerings, a proper and universal knowledge, perfect in understanding, skillful in leaving the world through liberation, perfect and complete understanding of all worldly dharma, unsurpassed, night-taming hero, teacher of gods and people, Buddha, the world honored one. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Namo Avalokiteshvara, Namo Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Namo Mahasamabhapta Bodhisattva, Namo Mahasamabhapta Bodhisattva, Namo Mahasamabhapta Bodhisattva, Namo Shittigarbha Bodhisattva, Namo Shittigarbha Bodhisattva, Namo Shittigarbha Bodhisattva, Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva, Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva, Namo Manjushri Bodhisattva, Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva, Namo Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva, Namo Maitreya Bodhisattva, Namo Maitreya, Namo Great Pure Sea like Bodhisattvas, Namo Great Pure Sea like Bodhisattvas, Namo Great Pure Sea like Bodhisattvas, Namo Deva Guarding Bodhisattvas, Namo Deva Guarding Bodhisattvas, Namo Deva Guarding Bodhisattvas. I take refuge refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way. In this life I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. Dwelling in the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the world. Dwelling in the refuge of Dharma, I learn to open many doors on the path transformation. Dwelling in the refuge of Sangha, shining light supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself help all people build fourfold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness gives rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give guidance and support along